So what do you say, Andrew? We talk up the depth chart for Mississippi State, man. A lot of good players we've talked about this offseason. A lot of question marks here or there, but a depth chart was released, and it all starts on offense with Blake Shapen. Let's dive into it, man. I have read from the Clarion Ledger put this out that Blake Shapen is set to be the starting quarterback. They have a lot of different question marks, I think, in terms of who's going to be the backup quarterback. I mean, obviously it comes to Hawk or Kamario Taylor, but then you get, you know, not necessarily a question mark at the running back position, but it's like how I would put it. It's a 1-2 punch with Devon Booth and Fluff Bothwell, and then Johnny Daniels as third string. So, or second or two and a half, whatever you want to call it. Just, all the guys we've talked about, we finally get to see in action this week. What have you heard specifically on the depth chart?
I don't know if I've heard anything, but just in terms of takeaways, I mean, obviously, look, we knew Shapen was going to be the guy at QB. That wasn't even a discussion. Now, the backup thing, it will be interesting. You would hope this is a game where you get to backup quarterback for a positive reason. Obviously, you don't want a situation where you're having to turn it over to a backup for a negative thing, but maybe we'll get a bit of an answer if State's up big in this thing in the fourth quarter. We get to see either Hawk or Kamario Taylor. Maybe both of those guys get to play. That'd certainly be ideal. Offensively from a skill talent standpoint, nothing surprises me. You knew
Mhm.
Devon Booth and Fluff Bothwell were the top of that room at running back. Brennan Thompson, Jordan Mosley, and Anthony Evans have all been talked about consistently as going to be the guys starting, at least to start off the year at receiver. So there's no sort of surprise there. Seydou Traore starting at tight end, you knew that. So from when it came to skill talent, skill talent and quarterback, we've known who the guys were going to be for quite some time now. The questions for State are really offensive line. And the move that was notable is that Albert Reese has been named starting left tackle. And that's interesting. We talked about on the last show that it sounded as though there was positive momentum in place for Timothy Lewis to come in and take that starting job as a redshirt freshman, which is something I thought would be a really positive development for the offensive line. If you're saying that a guy who has the highest athletic ceiling of that in that entire room is stepping in as a redshirt freshman and is able to grab that job, that gives me a lot of confidence that, okay, one, he is living up to his ceiling, and then two, it allows you to put other guys on the line in their key spots. Well, I don't know if what they were showing through camp, it just didn't translate, but clearly they feel they want to go with Timothy Lewis there. Now, not Timothy Lewis, with Albert Reese. On the one hand, it's understandable, right? He was a starter for you all throughout last season, primarily starting at right tackle. And he's the senior, veteran on that group. Actually, he's a redshirt senior. So he's in his fifth year in the program, returning starter. He's one of the team leaders. Makes all the sense in the world why you would want that guy as your left tackle, your most important position on the offensive line. The problem there is last year playing right tackle, he did not have a great season. He had issues, especially in pass protection. And he played better late in the year when they moved him inside to guard. And I think there was an expectation because he was working some at guard this offseason, that's where we'll see him. So the fact they're putting him at left tackle, one, it makes me think, okay, they think they need him there, which means they don't think Timothy Lewis is ready. And then two, that just kind of does give me some concern, though, about that spot. Because here's the other thing. We could talk about offseason development for sure. He missed the spring. He was out injured during the spring. So there's a bunch of valuable reps he could have been getting that he didn't get to have. I worry some with him at left tackle. Now, Lebby was asked about it in his press conference and said, well, we're going to play multiple guys there. Okay. I know he's expressing it as a sign of like we're excited about the depth. The reality of the situation, or I shouldn't say the reality of this situation because I technically don't know. The reality of college football, there are very few teams that have multiple guys that they feel good about playing at left tackle. Very few teams. Even like big boys, even schools that you talk about as contenders. It's rare you've got multiple guys that if you said, we have to start him at left tackle, we're going to be in good shape. You can sometimes get your one. Now, maybe they genuinely think we have multiple guys who can play there. Maybe they've been blown away by what they've seen from Albert Reese. But it gives me some pause. It does worry me a little bit. And you talk about rotating bodies. Well, then you add in, you look at the rest of the offensive line. At left guard, Jacoby Jackson or Luke Work. Center,
Right.
Cannon Boone or Brendan Smith. Right guard, Zach Owens or Trevor Mayberry. So we got three oars across the interior. Plus, we're talking about that at left tackle, we still don't know. We're still going to rotate bodies there. And again, you want to rotate offensive linemen. You're going to bring guys in and out for sure. That's a position where one guy's not going to play the entire game unless he absolutely has to. But all of these oars and all the talk about playing multiple guys at left tackle, to me, that says we still are not settled on 5 guys as our leading group. And when we talk about a position that cohesion matters so much, and getting those reps together and how, okay, I know how this guy is going to block in this situation. I know how I need to help him, or I know I don't need to help him. I can go take care of this. All of that matters when we talk about offensive line. And it worries me a little bit. Like I said the last show, I was getting my hopes up because I was like, hey, man, it sounds like Jimmy Lewis is coming and taking that job, which that mattered to me because, again, that means we're putting a highly athletic guy at left tackle and we're letting Albert Reese play guard where we have seen him perform better.
Right.
Now we don't know about that, and it gives me some questions about what that offensive line is going to be. Do we think it's a little bit of a nod to the older player that stuck it out and Lewis comes in and plays? Possibly. It could definitely be a thing of, hey, we're letting you be the guy to start off with. I also feel like, though, they could play him at guard. Now, and to be fair, Levy did say, guys are going to play, which suggests Percy Lewis is going to play. And look, I'll say this. I had a Matthew Watkins on Twitter pose this question to me today. Like, is it possible that they just feel because you've got all those question marks at guard or because you have more guys who can play along the interior, not necessarily question marks, but they have more guys that can play center and play guard than they feel good can play tackle, that they would like to put a guy that they know can play tackle and Albert Reese at tackle. That's fair. Yeah. And that's probably a big part of why. Honestly, that is probably a pretty good answer as to why he's there. I just am of the opinion, though, like if I'm thinking who are my best 5 and put my 5 best out there and get them in all in position, I would hope that Jimothy Lewis is one of those 5 and that Albert Reese is sliding in as one of your guards. I don't know. So we'll have to see on that.
I think it is interesting, though, and Mississippi State's not the only team in this current situation as we approach week 1. I mean, I'm sure Alabama and Auburn and all the other SEC teams are not set on, hey, these are our 5 guys on the offensive line. And I guess I forgot. I was going to ask something. I guess what I wanted to ask was like, I mean, in a way, is that a good thing to not completely have it figured out because you can experiment and kind of give guys like just kind of rotate. Plus, we talk about, I think there's so many tough positions in football, but being heavy guys like that on the O-line, sometimes you do need a break. Sometimes you do need a breather and need to just sit down for a play or two. And it kind of would be good, in my opinion, if State is one of those teams that doesn't try to wear out the starters like, hey, this is our set 5, and unless they're hurt, they're going to play, or unless we're like up big in a game, which what are the chances that's going to happen every single week this year for State? So I think you need to have this mindset of these are who we're going to start out with and let them play a couple quarters. And then, even if it's going good, let them take a breather and don't be afraid to put other guys out there. Because like we talk about, man, size and depth for Mississippi State's O-line is very critical for this offense this year. And we see that they have that. Now it's time to put it on the field.
Look, depth and being able to rotate bodies is a big thing, and they will be able to. So from that standpoint, like you're not wrong. Yes, having the options is a good thing. I just know that realistically, like, okay, they've got depth, they got options. Cool. What is more likely? oh man, there are so many talented players in this room that we just can't settle on 5, or man, we really need 5 guys to show us they can be starting linemen, and they haven't done that yet. Because the reality in college football is it's typically the latter. It's typically we don't know that we got 5 guys we can really lean on. And yeah, you're not just gonna play 5 guys. You're gonna rotate more than that. But you need to have your starting unit that you feel good about, where it's like, okay, if all these guys are healthy, fresh, ready to go, we got 5 guys up front that we can lean on. And I think the optimism is that Mississippi State going into this year was going to be able to find that, and they still might. And look, I should say, I'm having all this reaction. At the end of the day, do depth charts really matter? No. We see it all the time that these depth charts are completely pointless. Guys end up playing positions different than what they're listed at. Some guys will be listed as a starter while they're injured, and they'll never get taken off the depth chart because the coach is like, screw you, I'm not telling you who the guy is. They're the coaches who will do the or at literally every single name. Like, I'm not like, this guy is the starter, or this guy, or this guy, or this guy, and they'll go all the way down. Again, kind of just as like, well, I have to put out a depth chart, but I'm not telling you who's playing. It can all just be whatever. And also, as T. Watley pointed out a second ago, it could be given a nod. You could just be given a nod to older players, right? You could be highlighting guys of like, hey, man, you had a good camp, and we're going to reward you with a starting job, even if you may not be our true top guy. We do see that where someone might be a starter but may not be the guy who ends up playing the most. It's a little different in football, but I'm just thinking of a basketball example. Mississippi State basketball last year, Michael Nwoko was Mississippi State's starting center for like 30 of the 34 games or however many they played. Keyshawn Murphy played significantly more minutes at center than Michael Nwoko did. Nwoko played like 15 minutes a game because he'd give him like 10 good minutes, and then he'd be gassed the rest of the game. Keyshawn Murphy would come off the bench and was a double-digit scorer. And I hope he sucks at Auburn this year because, you have fun going there. And I don't have anything against Nwoko at LSU now, so I hope he sucks too. But, it's basketball discussion. So maybe it could be a similar thing here. I'm not trying to take too much away from the depth chart, but I was hoping it would be a little bit more settled that we know we're rolling in. These are our 5 offensive linemen. We feel good about this. And yes, we have good depth. We have guys who can play. We have guys who can rotate. But this is our starting unit, and we feel better about it. If we get to the other side of the ball, still kind of a lot of questions about who the starters are. Because if you look at the defense, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of the 11 positions have an or for the starting position. I'll say this. A couple things defensively. The big thing that I do want to address, a lot of questions and concerns from fans over the fact that State's transfers have not come in and taken over starting jobs. There's only one transfer who is locked in as a starter without the or designation, and that's Jeray Bledsoe at nose tackle. And I'll talk about that in a second because I find that interesting. But guys like Will Whitson, guys like Jamil Burroughs was actually lower on the depth chart, but like Will Whitson is not a locked-in starter. Jerron Manning is not a locked-in starter. You have Jalen Smith is actually listed as just as a backup, but Darian Gillette, not a locked-in starter. So you have a lot of these new pieces that are coming in, and they did not just come in and take over starting roles. I don't think it's that big of a deal. I know why people are concerned because the defense sucked a year ago. And if a bunch of the guys coming back are who are going to be your starters this year, do you feel good about that? What I'll say to that is, one, experience does matter on defense. As much as it is talent-driven, there is a point to be had that guys who are experienced and just know how to get into position do tend to perform better. Like there is something to be said that even if you're not the most talented, if you know where to arrive and can arrive at the right time, you can generally make enough plays to give yourself a chance.
Yeah.
And having guys who have been in this defense now for a year coming back does matter. So when we talk about players like a Brylan Lanier or a Hunter Washington on the back end potentially being starters, that may not be a disaster, right? That may not be the end of the world. Like, there's a good chance those guys are going to play better being in this defense for another season. The other part to that is a lot of the guys who came back, it sounds like they had good off seasons. I've heard good things about Deontay Anderson at defensive end. I think there's been good things said about Nick Mitchell. So you look at some of these guys who are returning, and to me, it's not just a case of like, well, they were a part of a bad defense, so they don't need to be starting. I think some of them have earned a starting job potentially to step in this year. And look, defense, even they are going to rotate the bodies quite a bit. I don't really the safety position. I'm not worried about. Linebacker, I'm not worried about. Defensive line, I'm really not worried about. I think they're going to rotate bodies in all of those spots. Now, D-line, what did stick out, I mentioned Jere Bledsoe starting. I don't think anybody saw that coming. That was not a guy anyone had on their radar as a potential starter. The two guys he's ahead of, though, Jamil Burroughs and Calvin Dinkins at nose tackle, those are two guys everybody was pretty excited about. So, and Burroughs specifically is a guy that had a good offseason. So if Bledsoe is stepping in is like, no, he is a starter, that gets me excited that he's going to play well for State there at that nose tackle spot. Now, I did not see Kedrick Bingley-Jones being the starter at defensive tackle. That really surprised me. Some of the guys that got at defensive end, whether it be a Will Whitson or Trevion Williams, I'm a little bit surprised they don't have them there. And they could move guys around, to be fair. But for what it's worth, I think this whole emphasis on getting bigger up front, Kedrick is 6'4", 320. Bledsoe is 6'4", 315. So I think some of it is they want that size along their two interior positions. That's a big part of it. Jack linebacker off the edge, Brandon Jennings or Malik Silla. That doesn't bother me because I think Brandon Jennings is expected to have a good year as one of your edge rushers. So I don't care that a transfer is not coming in immediately starting over him. If there is one position on defense, though, that I'm still worried about, for the same reasons I talked about with offensive line, it's corner. Because they have ors listed at both spots. It's Jet Jefferson or Diego Brumfield. It's Kelly Jones or Javen Williams. This is a team that going into the offseason, we said they've got to be able to address cornerback, especially once they lost their top guy in Bryce Pollock. They never addressed corner. They added a couple transfers that were questionable. They added a JUCO player in Jefferson that nobody got excited about, but seemingly had a really good offseason and sounds like had a very good camp to the point a lot of people thought he was going to be a starter. But Kelly Jones is a guy where it's a lot of potential overproduction. Diego Brumfield is a guy we just really haven't seen it from him. And when he was playing a lot, it was at Memphis as a part of a bad secondary. We're going into this year. It was a question, does State have one starting caliber corner? Again, we're now sitting here. We got 4 options going into week 1, and we haven't decided on who our top guys are. Now, like I said with offensive line, can we play the game of like, oh man, all 4 of those guys are outstanding, and we just can't sit here and say who's the guy is? Is that more likely? Or is it, we don't know if we have guys that we can trust? I am worried that it is the latter. And even in week 1, I think Southern's got some talent at wide receiver, and they got a quarterback who can push the ball downfield. I have questions about that. So, I don't the defensive depth chart overall, okay, but I think they're going to be fine. There's a couple interesting things, but I don't react too much. Corner gets me. I just like to close off the depth chart, and obviously, I know I've been going on here. I'll let you get in your thoughts before we move on. But the 2 biggest question marks, I think, for Mississippi State this offseason were offensive line and corner. And I think going into week 1, we still feel like we have big questions about those spots. That does concern me.
Well, I mean, it is a big concern for me as well. I mean, you had all off season, you had the spring game, you had spring practice, you had fall camp, you had media day, you had all this time, and you still don't know. Now, if I'm hopeful for anything where it says or, you're hoping that it's just everyone's too good and we just can't decide who's the best of them all. But let's be honest, I don't think that's the case with Mississippi State. I'm not saying there's bad talent there or anything. There's pretty good like studs in the secondary. There's studs at linebacker. And it's only concerning, as you put it, Andrew, that they haven't figured it out because they've had this whole off season. And I would also say, before you know it, you're going to hit the tough spots of the schedule in SEC play. What are the chances they even have it figured out by mid-season or middle of September, even just like as we kick off conference play? Like if they don't get it figured out soon, it's going to be a long season for them, like it was last year.
And look, it's week 1, right? They're going to have to work through some kinks. I'm not going to sit here and say that's not the case. I will say for offensive line, I feel good about Phil Loadholt. I feel good that they will be better in that group. I feel really good that that group will be better than they were a year ago. I don't feel really good that they're going to be good, but I feel really good that they are not going to be the same awful group that they were a season ago. Corner, I can't be confident yet. That I'm going to have to see it to believe it for that position group. Any shot they're using this game as a tester for starting spots by rotating a lot of players. It's possible. What worries
I don't
me
see
is
why not. I mean, you would hope that's the case, but
you would hope, but at the same time, it's like, is Southern a team on the road you want to be doing that against? Last year's Southern Miss team, yes, but this is not the same Southern Miss team. Like,
right.
I think you could get yourself in trouble if you're just saying we're just going to rotate bodies the whole time. Or they're going to rotate bodies, but I mean, like, all right, you get this series, you get this series. Like, instead of finding guys who you can trust to play, I feel like this is a game they needed to have, a starting 22 that they felt really good about. And there's a couple key spots I don't think they're locked in at. That is going to be a question.